A small group of astronomers in a cold observatory on the edge of Chile's mountains were the first to catch it. A flicker of light in the outer dark, repeating at perfect intervals. They thought it was a glitch in the telescope sensors. They ran diagnostics, cleaned the mirrors, and restarted the system. But the flicker returned. Every few minutes, a pulse measured, intentional. They sent the data to the main research station in Geneva. Within hours, observatories in Japan, South Africa, and California were scanning the same coordinates. The pulses were still there, precise, powerful, and coming from far beyond the orbit of Neptune. At first, the news didn't reach the public. It was classified, wrapped inside hundreds of layers of bureaucratic language, deep space anomaly under review. But inside every major space agency, something heavy was taking shape. Someone, or something, was coming. Weeks passed. The signals grew stronger, shifting in wavelength as if they were adjusting, learning. The world's best scientists worked without sleep. Supercomputers tried to decode the rhythm, searching for a pattern that could be language. One night, a researcher whispered what everyone feared to say aloud. "This isn't a message. It's a countdown." When that line was leaked online, the world changed overnight. News channels filled with shaky interviews, endless speculation, and maps of the solar system glowing with red circles around Neptune. People flooded social media with prayers, theories, and panic. Some said it was a new starship from another world. Others claimed it was a natural event or a government experiment gone wrong. But no one could explain why the signals kept coming, stronger each day. By the third week, even the governments couldn't hide it. The president of the United Earth Council, an alliance formed only years earlier to handle planetary climate issues, appeared on every screen. Her voice was calm but strained. "Humanity," she said, "we are not alone. The source of these signals is moving toward us." The words sent chills through billions. For the first time in history, every country put aside its disputes. Rival nations shared satellite data. Military and scientific teams merged under one name, the Earth Defense and Contact Authority. No one knew if it would be a contact mission or a defense operation. All they knew was that something intelligent was entering the solar system, and it was slowing down. Slowing down meant control. Control meant technology. Technology meant life, and that realization terrified everyone. Over the next few months, telescopes tracked faint shapes beyond Neptune's orbit. At first, they appeared as distant specks, like dust glinting in sunlight. But as weeks passed, the images became clearer. Dozens of symmetrical structures, each the size of a small city, moving in formation. The pattern wasn't random, it was tactical. News anchors spoke carefully now, using words like objects and vessels. But the truth was too big to soften. Humanity was witnessing an arrival from the stars. At night, streets were filled with silence. Cities dimmed their lights not from fear of attack, but because people wanted to see the sky. Children lay on rooftops, searching for strange lights. Some people painted banners that read, "Welcome," while others carried signs saying, "Stay away." Hope and fear lived side by side. In the middle of all this, ordinary people still went to work, cooked meals, and tucked their children into bed, pretending life was normal. But every conversation eventually turned to one question: what do they want? Scientists worked around the clock. They used deep space antennas to send out peaceful signals, music, images, greetings in hundreds of languages. But there was no reply. The approaching fleet remained silent, and that silence was louder than any threat. A few months later, Earth's largest observatory in Hawaii recorded something extraordinary. The objects had stopped just beyond Neptune, exactly at the edge of the solar system. For a week, they hovered in perfect stillness. Then, one by one, they began to release smaller craft, tiny, fast-moving probes scattering in every direction. Some headed toward Mars. Others slipped into the outer asteroid belt. One even moved straight toward Earth's orbit. The world held its breath. The first probe entered the atmosphere without warning. It didn't crash. It simply burned across the sky, leaving a trail of blue-white light that streaked over the Pacific Ocean before disappearing. The next morning, the world woke to confusion. Radar systems couldn't find any debris. Satellites detected no wreckage. Whatever it was, it had come and gone without a trace. That same day, every digital system on Earth, every phone, every computer, every navigation satellite flickered for exactly 2 seconds, just 2 seconds. Then everything returned to normal. But deep within government servers, hidden from the public, researchers found something chilling. Buried inside communication satellites were fragments of data, not random noise, but something structured. A code. Complex, elegant, and unlike any human programming language. The lead scientist studying it summed it up in one sentence. They just knocked on our door. The reaction across Earth was divided. Some believed it was the beginning of a peaceful first contact, a handshake from the stars. Others saw it as reconnaissance, a way for an advanced civilization to map human defenses. In the midst of the uncertainty, the newly formed Earth Defense and Contact Authority made a decision that would define human history. They would send a message back. For days, linguists, physicists, and AI specialists worked side by side, crafting a transmission that could be understood by logic, not language. It used mathematics, the one universal code. Within that structure, they embedded a simple, unambiguous statement. We are aware of you. We mean peace, but we will defend our world. The message was sent using every radio telescope on Earth, a single united voice of humanity. And for a long time, nothing happened. Hours passed, then days, then weeks. The objects beyond Neptune remained still, but something subtle changed. The signal pulses that had been regular for months suddenly stopped. The silence stretched into a month, then two. People began to wonder if the visitors had left, but deep space scans revealed otherwise. The fleet was still there, waiting, watching. And though no one said it out loud, everyone felt it. A quiet understanding that the universe had noticed us and was deciding what to do next. Months turned into a year. Humanity learned to live with the uncertainty. People joked about our neighbors in the dark. New movies, books, and songs imagined what the visitors might look like. Some saw them as angels, others as explorers, a few as conquerors. But beneath the laughter, fear lingered. The strange data fragments from the probe remained unsolved. Governments kept their studies secret. Satellite coverage around Neptune was restricted. Then one night, an old radio telescope in Australia, one that hadn't been used in years, picked up something faint. A whisper. A sequence of tones almost identical to human heartbeat rhythms. When converted into visual data, it formed an image, a blue and green sphere suspended in the dark. Earth. The message was clear. They were looking right at us. That image spread through the networks within hours. It was shown in classrooms, homes, and offices. People stared at it, realizing that for the first time, humanity was not the observer. It was the observed. The mood shifted again. No one talked about whether the visitors were friendly or not. The only question now was what humanity would do next. Would they send more messages? Would they prepare defenses? Would they wait? For now, Earth stayed quiet. But in every control room and every observatory, someone was watching those distant lights, waiting for them to move again. Because deep down, everyone knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. And somewhere in the frozen darkness beyond Neptune, something watched back, patient and silent, as if studying the only species in the galaxy bold enough to look up and say, "We see you." Far beyond Neptune's orbit, in the deep silence where sunlight fades into darkness, the visitors waited. They were not human. They had no need for air, food, or warmth. Their vessels drifted quietly in the cold void, vast machines shaped by a civilization older than humanity itself. To them, Earth was a small blue spark, a young world glowing softly in the dark. But that spark had caught their attention for a reason. For many years, the Terran Union had expanded across hundreds of star systems. They were explorers, traders, and sometimes conquerors, uniting or absorbing civilizations they found. They had seen thousands of worlds, but few like this one. When their deep space scanners first detected the electromagnetic waves coming from Earth, they assumed it was just another primitive world, one with early technology. But when they studied the patterns of those signals, something strange appeared. They saw music. They saw mathematics. They saw art and chaos and laughter. It didn't fit their expectations. Humanity's broadcast carried both beauty and madness, poetry beside war reports, love songs beside emergency news. It was a world of contradictions, and that fascinated them. The Terran commanders gathered inside their flagship, a structure larger than any city on Earth. They studied images captured from millions of kilometers away. Glowing cities, moving machines, aircraft streaking through clouds. Too fast, one of them said in their own complex language, a pattern of tones and light. They are moving too fast for their age. They compared Earth's progress to thousands of known civilizations. Most advanced slowly, step by step, fire, metal, flight, stars. But humanity had done in a few thousand years what others took millions to achieve. That kind of growth always came with danger. In their history, the Terran Union had seen young species destroy themselves when power outgrew wisdom. They had also seen worlds that turned violent toward others, expanding outward until stopped. Some of the Terran Council believed Earth would do the same. If we do not act now, they warned, they will reach us one day. Others disagreed. They had watched the human message sent from Earth. We mean peace, but we will defend our world. To some, that message was a sign of balance, a species that understood both strength and mercy. The debate split their ranks. For weeks, they observed silently. Their drones mapped the solar system, scanning planets, moons, and satellites. They learned Earth's languages, studied its cultures, even listened to human music. The more they watched, the more they realized humanity was not easy to define. They saw humans fight, yet also rescue each other. They saw fear and courage live side by side. They saw division and unity. It confused them. One of their observers noted, "They are unpredictable." But unpredictability is not weakness, and it is potential. Meanwhile, on Earth, no one knew about the discussions happening light years away. Humanity only knew that the visitors had not moved. The silence made people restless. Scientists still watched the skies, and every night news stations ran programs trying to guess what the aliens wanted. Some said they were studying us. Some said they were waiting for something. Some even said they were afraid. For ordinary people, life continued, but under a shadow of curiosity. Children drew pictures of the ships they imagined. Poets wrote verses about the watchers beyond the sky. Farmers, drivers, and teachers looked up at night and wondered if eyes were looking back, and they were. The Terran Union had thousands of viewing platforms aboard their fleet, enormous chambers filled with projection light, showing live images of Earth. Entire groups of their scientists observed the planet's oceans, mountains, and storms. They even tracked patterns of human migration, cities lighting up at night, and airplanes crossing continents like glowing insects. One young Terran observer was particularly drawn to human broadcasts, old movies, radio shows, and news. She couldn't understand why humans created stories that made them cry. "They show pain," she said to her commander, "yet they smile." Her commander replied, "That is what makes them dangerous. They can turn pain into power." The phrase spread among the fleet, "turn pain into power." It became the central idea in their study of humans. They realized humans had survived endless disasters, wars, disease, hunger, climate change. Yet they always rebuilt. No other known species had such resilience. The Terran Union began to see Earth not as a weak planet, but as a potential rival. The Council met again. This time, the decision was urgent. Some argued for contact, peaceful, diplomatic, respectful. "They may become valuable allies," they said. "They have a spark we lost long ago," but others saw only risk. "They expand too quickly. If we wait, they will leave their world and reach others. Their chaos will spread across the stars." The vote ended in conflict. No final decision was made. The fleet was told to hold position and continue observation until the Union's leaders decided. Weeks passed. The Terran researchers gathered more data, monitoring Earth's digital networks, weather systems, and even emotional patterns through social media. They couldn't believe how open humans were with their thoughts. To them, it was as if the entire species shouted its emotions into space. They learned about kindness, creativity, humor, but also about greed, anger, and fear. They couldn't tell which side would win in the long run. Meanwhile, their lower-ranking officers started to grow nervous. "We stay here too long," one said. "They might detect us." But they were already detected. Earth's telescopes, now upgraded under Project Threshold, could see their ships more clearly. Humanity had begun building defenses, not weapons of destruction, but networks to protect communications, satellites, and resources. From the Terran perspective, it was proof of danger. "They prepare for war. one commander said. But another replied, "No, they prepare to survive." The difference mattered. On Earth, scientists continued sending peaceful messages. They used mathematics, music, and even drawings to communicate intent. They hoped to show humanity's heart, that curiosity was stronger than fear. The messages reached the Terran fleet. They decoded everyone. They even began to understand parts of human languages, but they never replied why. Because their leaders still feared what might happen next. If they contacted Earth, they risked giving away their position and technology. If they attacked, they might destroy a species that could have one day been a great ally. So they waited, uncertain, conflicted, watching every move humanity made. But something began to change within the fleet. Among the younger Terran scientists, admiration for humanity grew. They watched human documentaries, speeches, and art, and some even started using human words to describe emotions they had never felt before. Words like hope and freedom. These words spread quietly among them. It was the first time the Terran Union faced emotional disagreement inside their ranks. The elders called it contamination. The young called it awakening. Back on Earth, the tension continued. Governments hid information, afraid to cause panic. Yet people could sense something was happening. The air felt charged. The world was awake in a way it had never been before. Artists began painting the visitors as mirrors, showing alien shapes with human eyes. Philosophers said, "Maybe we are not waiting for them to understand us. Maybe we are learning to understand ourselves." And somewhere deep in the Pacific Ocean, one of Earth's satellites suddenly went offline. A small probe, smaller than a car, had passed close to it. The device wasn't human-made. It was one of the Terran observation drones. It had been programmed to watch and record. But for reasons no one on their fleet understood, it did something strange. It broadcasted an image, not to its own fleet, but to Earth. The image was simple, 2 circles overlapping, glowing faintly in space, one blue, one silver. The signal lasted only a few seconds before the probe self-destructed. Scientists on Earth were shocked. They didn't know if it was a mistake or a message, but the world saw it as a sign of peace, 2 worlds meeting in the dark. When that news reached the Terran fleet, the Council panicked. "That probe disobeyed command," they said. "It shared data without permission." But others saw it differently. "Maybe it wasn't a malfunction," one observer whispered. "Maybe the humans inspired it." For the first time in thousands of years, the Terran Union's unity began to crack, not because of war, but because of wonder. They had come to judge humanity. Instead, humanity had changed them. The debate continued in silence across the dark void. The fleet still hovered near Neptune, motionless and waiting. But somewhere deep inside the vast flagship, a quiet understanding began to grow among the watchers. Perhaps Earth was not a threat to the galaxy. Perhaps Earth was a reminder that life was not meant to be predictable or perfect or controlled. Perhaps, in the endless cold of space, the strange, emotional, restless species had just reminded them what it meant to be alive. Months had passed since the strange probe sent its mysterious image, the 2 glowing circles overlapping in space. People still talked about it everywhere. Some called it a sign of friendship. Others said it was a warning. But no one truly knew what it meant. The alien fleet still waited silently beyond Neptune. They hadn't moved or spoken, and their silence began to feel heavier than any threat. Earth scientists kept watching, trying to decode their purpose. The whole planet was living in a strange balance between fear and curiosity. At first, people thought life would return to normal. But deep down, everyone knew it wouldn't. Humanity had seen something impossible, proof that they were not alone. And once you know you're not alone, you can never see the world the same way again. Governments around the world met almost daily. Leaders who once argued about borders and resources were now sitting at the same tables. They spoke in calm, careful tones, trying to plan for something they didn't fully understand. The United Earth Council, once created to manage climate change, became the heart of everything. But soon it wasn't enough. Humanity needed something stronger, something faster. So they formed a new organization, Project Threshold. Its purpose was simple: to protect Earth, not through weapons of destruction, but through intelligence, unity, and communication. Project Threshold connected scientists, Engineers, linguists, and thinkers from every continent. It was the first time in human history that every nation shared all their technology and research. There were no secrets now, not when the stars were watching. Inside one of the research centers built in a desert valley, teams worked day and night. The walls were covered in data from the alien signals, energy readings, decoded symbols, and satellite images. Some believed the visitors were analyzing Earth's defense systems. Others thought they were waiting to see how humans reacted. No one wanted to admit the truth out loud, that the visitors might be deciding whether Earth was worth saving or destroying. But the fear was there, quiet but deep. As the project continued, humanity began creating something extraordinary. They called it the quantum mirror, a network of systems capable of reading deep space energy signatures in real time. It was meant to see beyond light, as one scientist said. The quantum mirror could track even the smallest movement from the alien fleet. And when they first turned it on, everyone in the control room fell silent. The fleet wasn't just waiting. It was moving in patterns, slow, deliberate shifts as if forming shapes or messages. The realization struck like thunder. They weren't asleep. They were studying us. Across the world, the public started asking questions the governments couldn't answer. Why were the aliens still here? What were they waiting for? Were they peaceful? Or were they deciding something darker? Every country had its own theories, and with them came fear. Some groups demanded the world send a warning, a message to tell the visitors to stay away. Others said that would be foolish, that humanity should remain calm and open. Amid all this confusion, a small group within Project Threshold made a bold decision. They would craft a new message, something different, something human. They didn't want to send numbers or codes this time. They wanted to send emotion, the one thing that defined humanity. Over several weeks, artists, scientists, and philosophers worked together. They selected sounds, voices, and images from Earth, laughter, rain, music, ocean waves, and even the heartbeat of a child. They wanted the message to say, this is who we are, not perfect, but alive. When the message was ready, it was broadcast through every radio telescope on Earth. The transmission lasted only 7 minutes, and when it ended, the whole planet waited. For days, nothing happened. Then on the 6th day, the alien signal stopped completely. No movement. No energy pulses. No sound. The silence that followed was terrifying. Some believed the aliens had accepted the message. Others feared it had angered them. No one knew what was coming next. Weeks later, strange things began to happen. Communication satellites started losing signals in short bursts. 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there. Air traffic controllers noticed interference in radar systems. Deep-sea cables flickered with unexplained data spikes. It was as if something or someone was testing Earth's technology, touching its edges without breaking it. In the control rooms of Project Threshold, alarms flashed almost every day. The scientists worked endlessly trying to trace the source. Finally, one night they found it. The interference wasn't random. It came in patterns, almost like breathing. It wasn't an attack. It was a study. The aliens were exploring Earth's digital world, learning how humanity communicated, how they built, how they thought. When this discovery was announced in the United Earth Council, a silence filled the room. One of the senior scientists stood up and said quietly, "They are not here to destroy us. They are here to understand us, but they are deciding something." The world leaders looked at each other. No one said what they were all thinking. What if they decide we are not worth saving? Around the planet, people reacted differently. Some turned to religion, saying the visitors were messengers of a higher power. Others built underground shelters, fearing invasion. Most simply tried to live their lives, go to work, spend time with family, hold on to normalcy in a time that didn't feel normal anymore. But something remarkable began to happen. For the first time in history, there were no wars. No nations pointing weapons at each other. No hatred spreading across borders, because now humanity had only one fear, and it was not each other. People began working together. Scientists shared discoveries. Farmers sent food to countries in need. Artists painted together across continents, turning city walls into colorful messages of hope and peace. It was as if the entire planet had woken up to its own reflection, realizing how small and precious it really was, And that was when the most unexpected thing happened. The quantum mirror detected a signal, faint, but unmistakable, coming from one of the alien ships. It wasn't a code or a threat. It was a sound, a heartbeat, slow, deep, and rhythmic, just like the one humanity had sent in their message weeks earlier. The scientists couldn't believe it. The aliens were copying the human heartbeat, not mocking it and mirroring it. The discovery spread across the world in hours. People wept when they heard it played on the news. It was as if the universe had spoken back for the first time. But along with hope came fear again. Because if they could send a signal so similar, it meant they understood human communication better than anyone imagined. And understanding could mean two things: empathy or control. Inside Project Threshold, debates grew louder. Some argued humanity should prepare for defense. Others said they must continue peaceful outreach. Finally, the Global Council decided to send one last message, the most direct one yet. This time, it wasn't a song or a code. It was a simple statement translated into pure mathematical logic impossible to misunderstand. The message said, "We see you. We respect you. But this planet is our home. Do not harm it." It was short, firm, and peaceful, but it carried a warning hidden beneath its calm tone. The signal was sent across space, reaching the edge of the solar system in a matter of hours. And once again, the galaxy went quiet. The fleet beyond Neptune stayed perfectly still. No movement, no light, no response. For days, the world held its breath. Then, one by one, the lights on the alien ships began to fade. Not disappear, just dim, as if lowering their brightness. In the command rooms on Earth, scientists watched in disbelief. One whispered, "They're acknowledging us." The entire control room broke into quiet applause, not loud but emotional, filled with relief and awe. Across the planet, people celebrated cautiously. It wasn't victory, it wasn't friendship, but it was something, an understanding between two worlds. For the first time, humanity had stood up to the unknown, not with fear but with confidence. And out there, far beyond Neptune, in the deep black where light dies, the Watchers listened. They had seen something in humanity they hadn't expected. Courage mixed with peace, strength without aggression. The fleet didn't leave, but it also didn't advance. It simply watched quietly, and on Earth, people finally slept peacefully again, knowing the sky was full of eyes, not enemies, but witnesses. Humanity had passed its first test. The message had been sent. The warning had been heard, and now the entire galaxy knew one truth that would echo through time. Humans may be fragile, but they are not weak. They protect what they love, even under the shadow of the stars. For many months after Earth's final message, space was quiet. The alien fleet stayed where it was, hovering in the darkness beyond Neptune, far enough to be invisible to the human eye, but close enough to remind everyone that they were still there. People slowly began to relax. The fear that had gripped the world started to fade. Some said the visitors had accepted Earth's message and chosen peace. Others believed they were just watching, still deciding. Whatever the truth was, life on Earth began to move forward again. Cities brightened their lights. Schools reopened. News stations stopped showing daily updates about the fleet. People wanted to believe it was over. But in quiet corners of the planet, deep beneath the surface, scientists and engineers of Project Threshold were still working. Always watching. Always listening. The project had grown bigger than ever. Every satellite, observatory, and signal tower was now linked into one global network called the Horizon Line, a system built to detect any movement or signal from the unknown. It was humanity's invisible shield, powered not by weapons but by information. And one cold night, that shield detected something strange, a flicker, a single, sharp pulse of energy coming from the outer system. It wasn't strong enough to cause alarm, but it was clear enough to be intentional. The readings were unusual, steady, mathematical, rhythmic. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message. But it wasn't directed toward Earth. It was sent into deep space, away from the solar system. When scientists decoded it, the message translated into a single repeating pattern, coordinates pointing toward Earth's direction. It was as if the alien fleet had sent a warning to someone else. The question was, who? For days, world leaders held private meetings. No information was shared with the public. People only noticed that something was wrong because the news suddenly went quiet again, and satellites near Neptune stopped sending images. The silence brought back the old fear. People began to whisper about it again. The Watchers, the fleet, the unknown. Finally, the United Earth Council released a statement. It was short, calm, and careful. They said, "We have detected new signals of unknown origin. There is no threat to Earth at this time. Please remain calm." But inside Project Threshold, calm was the last thing people felt. The new data showed that the alien fleet had launched smaller crafts, hundreds of them, into different parts of the solar system. Some headed toward Mars, others toward the Moon. A few came close to Earth's orbit but didn't enter. It looked like surveillance. It looked like testing. But there was something unusual. Every craft that came near Earth didn't stay long. They would scan the area, then retreat quickly, almost as if they were nervous. It didn't make sense. Why would a civilization advanced enough to travel across stars be afraid to come closer? One scientist inside Project Threshold said softly, "Maybe they've seen something that scares them." No one laughed. Then, the first real event happened. It began with a strange interference across all of Earth's networks. Phones, internet, GPS, even television signals. For exactly 12 minutes, the planet went quiet. Screens went black. Radio stopped. Airplanes paused mid-flight communication. And then, just as suddenly, everything came back. At first, people thought it was a global glitch. But when engineers checked the data, they found something chilling. Every single electronic system on Earth had received a burst of data. Short, compressed and encrypted in a pattern no human had ever used. They called it the echo signal. For days, the brightest minds tried to decode it. They used quantum computers, AI programs, and mathematical models. But the pattern didn't behave like anything man-made. It was alive, shifting, adapting, almost like it was watching the humans trying to understand it. Some believed it was a test. Some said it was a warning. Some feared it was a door being opened. Finally, after endless nights of analysis, a small breakthrough came. When the pattern was visualized, it formed a simple image, a glowing circle surrounded by smaller dots. It was the solar system, and one by one, the dots around Earth began to blink, turning red in the sequence. It was not random. It was a countdown. But to what? Project Threshold immediately raised its alert level. All observatories were ordered to focus on the outer planets. Satellites began scanning for any changes near Neptune, and that's when they saw it. From the main fleet, one of the largest ships had detached, slow and deliberate. It began to move inward, toward the center of the solar system. The world held its breath. The ship was not coming straight toward Earth. It stopped near the orbit of Mars, remaining still for several days. Then, with almost impossible precision, it released a bright pulse of light, a massive energy wave that spread across the solar system. At first, it caused no harm. It didn't destroy anything, didn't affect the planets. But when the pulse reached Earth's satellites, it left something behind, a digital message encoded in the wave. The scientists worked day and night to decode it. And when they did, the room went silent. The message said, "Do not send more signals. You have been seen. You have been measured. Remain within your world." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an invitation. It was a boundary. For the first time, humanity realized, the visitors weren't just observing. They were enforcing something. Maybe the galaxy had rules and Earth had just broken one. The message spread across the world. Governments tried to keep it quiet, but information always finds a way. Soon, people everywhere were talking about the warning. It divided the planet again. Some said humanity should obey, stay silent, stop reaching out. Others said the opposite, that Earth had every right to explore the universe. Protests filled the streets. Artists painted murals of humans standing under a vast sky, staring back at invisible watchers. Teachers used the event to remind children that being small didn't mean being powerless. But deep inside, fear began to grow again. The idea that someone, or something out there, could control the limits of human progress was unbearable. Humanity had fought too hard to come this far, only to be told to stop. That's when Project Threshold took a new direction. Instead of building weapons, they built something far more powerful, The Lazarus Array, a massive digital defense system hidden within the network of satellites orbiting Earth. Its purpose was simple: to protect Earth's communication systems from outside control. It could detect and counter any foreign signal, even one from beyond the stars. And when it was finally activated, the scientists sent a single, quiet message back into space. It wasn't aggressive or loud. It wasn't meant to challenge, it simply said, "We understand your warning, but we will not be silent." The message was small, almost invisible compared to the energy of the alien fleet. But it was enough. Hours later, deep space sensors picked up movement again. The massive ship near Mars began to retreat slowly. The smaller crafts near the moon vanished one by one. The fleet wasn't attacking. It was pulling back. For days, scientists watched in disbelief as the visitors returned to their position beyond Neptune, back to the silent darkness where they had first appeared. And then, one final signal came through, faint, barely detectable. It wasn't words this time. It was a sound, a soft echo of humanity's own message. Their heartbeat. It pulsed once, then stopped. It was as if the galaxy itself had nodded in acknowledgement. On Earth, people didn't know whether to celebrate or worry. Some said humanity had earned respect. Others said it was just the beginning of something larger, that the Watchers were simply testing human resolve. But something had changed forever. For the first time, humanity didn't just receive a warning, it gave one back. And somewhere beyond the stars, that warning was heard. The message from Earth, short and simple, now carried through the quiet of space like a promise: "We see you. We are not your enemies, but we are not your subjects either." The Watchers in the darkness understood. They had underestimated the small blue world that refused to bow, and from that day forward, Earth was no longer seen as a fragile planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was seen as something else entirely, a world that dared to speak back, a world that would never again be silent. The days after the alien fleet retreated were filled with both relief and confusion. Across Earth, people couldn't decide whether to feel proud or scared. The sky looked the same, calm and endless, yet everyone knew something beyond it had changed. For the first time in history, humanity had spoken back to beings from the stars, and they had listened. But that simple act opened a question bigger than any before. What now? In the quiet meeting rooms of Project Threshold, the air was heavy with silence. Scientists sat around a large circular table, screens glowing softly around them. On the screens, images of the alien ships flickered in the dark beyond Neptune, still motionless but now farther away. "Do you think they're gone for good?" someone asked. No one answered at first. Then one of the older researchers spoke slowly. "They're watching. They always have been, but now they're thinking." That thought stayed with everyone. The idea that somewhere in the cold emptiness something intelligent was thinking about humanity made even the bravest hearts uneasy. And yet there was also pride. A quiet, stubborn pride. For centuries, humans had looked at the stars and wondered if anyone out there would notice them. Now they knew. Someone had. Outside those secret rooms, the world was changing again. Television screens were filled with debates, experts arguing endlessly. Should humanity stay quiet or continue exploring? Some said Earth should respect the warning and stop all signals into space. "We've seen what's out there," they said. "We should not disturb it." Others disagreed. "We're explorers," they shouted. "If we stop now, we lose what makes us human." Universities filled with new energy. Young students began studying astronomy, communication theory, and alien linguistics. They wanted to understand how to talk, how to make peace through knowledge, not fear. Even in small villages far from big cities, people gathered outside at night staring at the stars. They talked about what it meant to be seen, to be part of something so vast. Humanity, for the first time, wasn't just looking up at the universe. It was part of it. Meanwhile, inside Project Threshold, things were moving faster than anyone expected. After decoding the alien warning, the team had continued to study every signal, every flicker from deep space. They discovered something remarkable, faint echoes that didn't come from the alien fleet but from somewhere much farther away. It was as if other civilizations were listening too. And they had heard the conversation. One by one, small signals appeared, weak, distant, but clearly not natural. Different rhythms, different frequencies. like whispers coming from different corners of the galaxy. It was no longer a dialogue. It was becoming a debate. At first, the messages were random bursts of light or energy waves hard to interpret. But soon patterns began to form. Mathematical sequences, universal constants, harmonic tones. It was as if multiple worlds were joining a silent discussion, each saying, "We heard you." The scientists called it the debate of the stars. No one knew exactly what these civilizations were saying, but one thing became clear. Earth had become the center of attention. The message humanity sent, "We understand your warning, but we will not be silent," had traveled farther than anyone expected. Now, other voices wanted to be heard. Some signals appeared to agree with the first alien fleet, sending structured pulses similar to their warning tone, as if supporting the idea of boundaries and silence. But others sent more open, inviting signals, soft harmonic tones and wave patterns that looked like they were encouraging Earth's courage to speak. It was as if the galaxy itself was divided. On Earth, that realization changed everything. News outlets started calling it the Great Cosmic Debate. For the first time, people saw that humanity wasn't alone, and that even in the stars, disagreement existed. Artists painted murals of glowing skies filled with light patterns. Musicians created songs inspired by the rhythms of the new signals. Philosophers wrote about the meaning of being heard by a universe full of different minds, and among all this, Project Threshold became humanity's unofficial voice, the translators between the world and the cosmos. Inside their control center, the screen showed data flowing in waves, light pulses from distant stars, radio bursts from the fleet near Neptune, faint energy patterns that seemed almost musical. A young scientist looked at one of the displays and whispered, "It's like they're arguing about us." And maybe they were. Weeks passed. The alien fleet remained silent but unmoving. No new warnings came, no attacks, no threats. Only distant signals continued, each with their own rhythm. Humanity faced its biggest decision. Should they reply again? Should they join the debate? World leaders gathered for a global summit. For days, they talked behind closed doors. Every country wanted to be part of the decision. Some feared that another message could provoke danger. Others said silence would mean surrender. In the end, the decision came not from a leader but from a scientist. He said, "If they're debating because of us, then we're already part of it. We can't step back now. We should speak, not to challenge, but to explain." And so, Project Threshold began crafting a new message, one not written in words, but in universal language, mathematics, art, and emotion. The message they prepared was simple yet beautiful, a sequence of lights and tones that represented the story of Earth, its history, its mistakes, and its hope. It showed how humans had once fought one another, but learned to stand together. It showed how they looked up at the stars not with greed, but with curiosity. It was humanity's introduction, not as conquerors, but as dreamers. When the message was finally ready, the moment felt sacred. The lights in the control room dimmed. The team stood quietly around the main console. One voice said softly, "Once we send this, we can't take it back." The response came gently, "Then let it be true." The signal was sent, a long, glowing wave of information that traveled across the solar system, passing the Moon, Mars, and Jupiter, until it reached the edges of the fleet beyond Neptune, and then nothing, no reaction, no movement. The ship stayed still. The silence stretched for hours, then days. Some began to fear they had made a mistake. Maybe the warning had been serious after all. Maybe they had crossed a line they couldn't see. But on the third day, something unexpected happened. A light from the fleet blinked, then another, then a third. The pulses were slow, rhythmic, not threatening, not cold. When the team analyzed them, they realized the pattern was almost identical to Earth's message, but mirrored. It was an answer, not a warning this time. Not a command, just a response. And deep within that rhythm, scientists discovered something astonishing. Small variations that matched the distant signals from other star systems. It wasn't just the fleet replying. Others had joined in too. The debate of the stars had turned into something else, a conversation. From that day onward, Earth began to change its relationship with the universe. The idea of fear slowly gave way to wonder again. Schools started teaching galactic communication as part of science. Children dreamed not of becoming astronauts, but ambassadors of Earth. For the first time, humanity didn't feel small in the face of the stars. They felt connected, part of a greater network of voices spread across the galaxy. People began saying that maybe the universe wasn't a battlefield, but a community, one that had its arguments, its rules, but also its moments of unity. Humanity's role was not to dominate or hide, but to listen, learn, and speak with honesty. And even though the Watchers beyond Neptune still stood guard, they no longer seemed distant. They were quiet, yes, but no longer cold. It was as if they were waiting and curious to see what this small, determined world would say next. The sky was the same as before, but when people looked up now, they didn't just see stars. They saw voices. They saw stories. They saw possibility. The debate among the stars was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. But for humanity, one truth had become clear. They were not alone, and they were no longer silent. The world had found its voice in the vastness of space. And now the galaxy was listening. For years, Earth had waited, watched, and listened. Humanity had sent messages, built networks, and prepared quietly for what might come. The alien fleet beyond Neptune had come and gone, leaving traces in space and in the minds of every person on the planet. And now, humanity was learning the meaning of patience. The sky was alive in a way it never had been before, not with fireworks or city lights, but with awareness, the quiet understanding that somewhere in the cold, distant reaches of space, someone was paying attention. Children looked up at the stars and wondered if the shapes above were the Watchers themselves. Silently studying, learning, maybe even understanding, teachers used that wonder as lessons, asking questions that no textbooks could answer. Scientists worked with renewed determination, inspired not by fear but by curiosity. For the first time, the human race felt connected not just to the world, but to the universe itself. The alien fleet remained distant just past Neptune, still unmoving. Yet the energy readings from their ships had changed. They were no longer cold or calculating. Subtle pulses of light traveled across space in quiet rhythms. Patterns appeared to match the signals humanity had sent. First a response, then a dialogue, and now something more: recognition. Project Threshold monitored every pulse, every flicker, and shared its findings with the world. The information was kept simple, framed as signals of acknowledgement because no one could explain them fully. Yet the effect on people was profound. It was no longer about fear. It was about respect. For months, humanity worked in silence, quietly preparing not for war but for understanding. New technologies were developed to monitor signals, study space, and even attempt to communicate in ways that were universal. No weapons were built, no armies mobilized. Instead, schools taught children about mathematics, energy, and patterns, skills that might one day help them speak with the stars. Artists and musicians created works inspired by signals. Cities held starlight festivals, celebrating humanity's place in the cosmos. People painted murals of glowing blue planets, mysterious ships beyond Neptune, and overlapping circles that represented unity, courage, and curiosity. In a small observatory in the Andes, a young scientist recorded the faint pulse of the fleet and played it alongside a human heartbeat. The rhythm matched almost perfectly, like the universe itself was repeating the message humanity had sent years before. It was more than a signal. It was a conversation, a quiet echo of recognition. Then one evening, the first message came. Not in words, not in numbers, but in light. Across Project Threshold's monitors, a sequence of pulses appeared from the fleet. Each pulse was long and steady, then short and bright, creating a rhythm that repeated across all systems. It was beautiful. For the first time, humanity realized the fleet was communicating not just with machines, but with understanding, trying to bridge a gap that had existed for countless light years. The scientists studied it carefully. They matched it with previous messages. The pattern seemed almost human in nature, thoughtful, deliberate, and patient. No one knew how to interpret it fully, but everyone knew one thing: it was not hostile. Across the globe, the news spread quietly at first, then like wildfire. People stood outside at night to look at the sky. Farmers paused in their fields. Office workers stepped onto rooftops. Children whispered to each other about the lights that might be watching. Humanity had learned a new feeling: Awe combined with humility, and for the first time no one felt small. Earth had survived its first encounter. Humanity had sent a message and been seen, and the universe had responded, softly, carefully, like a teacher acknowledging a student's courage. Inside Project Threshold, the team worked on a new idea. If humanity could be seen and heard, then perhaps Earth could become a hub, a planet that shared not just its science and culture, but its compassion, creativity, and spirit. They called the initiative the Echo of Humanity. It was not about conquest. It was not about showing strength. It was about sharing life itself. Music, stories, art, mathematics, and even emotions, and all transmitted in waves that could travel through space. The first transmissions included the history of Earth, from simple discoveries like fire and agriculture to complex achievements like art, medicine, and music. It showed humanity's mistakes. Yes, but also its perseverance, its kindness, and its drive to explore and understand. It was a message not of warning, but of identity. Meanwhile, the alien fleet continued to pulse and respond. The signals grew stronger, more intricate, almost like a conversation. For the first time, the Watchers were revealing something of themselves, not as conquerors but as students, observing and learning from humanity as much as humans learned from them. Across the solar system, the signals from other star systems joined the rhythm. Humanity realized the galaxy was vast, but it was alive with attention and curiosity. The universe was no longer an empty void. It was a stage for conversation, connection, and understanding. And Earth, this small blue planet, was at the center. People across the world began to feel the change. It wasn't just scientists or leaders. Farmers, teachers, musicians, engineers, everyone felt a quiet pride. They knew that their small world had spoken and been heard, and that it had shaped the awareness of beings far beyond imagination. No one knew what would come next. Perhaps the Watchers would remain silent, or perhaps they would eventually make contact. But one thing was certain. Humanity had found its voice, and the voice was strong. Children no longer feared the stars. They dreamed of speaking to them. Young scientists imagined new ways to communicate. Artists painted murals not of fear, but of connection. And slowly, humanity began to see itself as more than a small, fragile planet. Earth was a teacher of courage, of resilience, and of life itself. In time, the pulses from the alien fleet became steady and rhythmic, not commands, not threats, but a quiet acknowledgement. It was as if the fleet had said, "We see you. We respect your courage. You are alive, and that matters." Humanity had never needed a clearer moment of pride. Even ordinary people felt it. Farmers paused to look at the sky. Street cleaners stopped their work for a moment. Teachers told stories of the stars to their students. Everyone, in their own way, understood that life on Earth had earned recognition not through weapons, but through perseverance, curiosity, and unity, and that understanding spread like a light across the planet. Years passed. Humanity grew more united. Conflicts that had once divided the world became easier to resolve. People realized that if they could speak to the stars, they could also find common ground with each other. Exploration became the new goal, not just of space, but of knowledge and understanding. Humans learned to care for the planet they had been entrusted with and for each other. The alien fleet never left entirely. They watched from afar, sometimes sending subtle pulses of light as if checking in. And humanity continued to respond, with messages, with art, with music, and with quiet acts of kindness that traveled far beyond the planet itself. The galaxy had learned the first lesson about Earth, and humanity had learned something even more important about itself. In classrooms, children asked their teachers, "Will we ever meet them?" And teachers smiled. Perhaps one day. But what matters is that they already know who we are, and we know who we are too. Across the oceans and mountains, people looked up at the stars and felt the same quiet pride. For the first time, the universe was not a place of fear. It was a place of potential. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Neptune, the Watchers pulsed gently in the night. They had learned from humanity. Just as humanity had learned from them, the lesson was simple, and it was clear. Life, wherever it exists, deserves respect. The courage to speak, even in the face of the unknown, is the greatest power, and humanity, fragile but unyielding, had reminded the galaxy what it means to be alive. The stars no longer felt distant. They felt alive, and Earth, small but brave, had become a light the universe would never forget. It was not a world of weapons or fear. It was a world of courage, hope, and voice. And from that day forward, humanity knew that no matter what came from the darkness beyond, one truth would always remain. They had spoken. They had been heard, and they would never again be silent.